The Final Fantasy XIV Fan Fest for Japan is literally in just a few days, where we will get the reveal of our last job. We already know Viper is our melee class, and a lot of us suspect our caster job that we know is coming is either going to be Time Mage or Green Mage. Let's go over what we think is going to happen. All right. Hey, what's up? Eagle Falcon here. So, literally the Fan Fest is tomorrow at this point. I had a whole thing planned, but I had to scrap it. So, we're just doing an old school video essay to get my prediction out there. So, we already know one of the two jobs we're getting. We're finding out what our caster job is literally tomorrow. And quite frankly, we have to look at what the caster space is right now as a whole. So right now we have 4 casters, only 3 of which are allowed to sit at the table. And the status of them is very interesting when you think about it. Because there's a lot of jobs in the other categories that are kind of like each other, kind of in the same realm of difficulty, but caster is so wide. You have summoner, which is right now the easiest job to play. Once you know the rotation of what to do, you're just going to do it. There's no reason to ever do anything but open up with Bahamut after you do your first initial cast for the countdown. There's no reason not to pop your buff there. There's no reason to just pop all your spells that you can do there. Then you're going to do your other 3 summons. Then you're going to do Phoenix. Then you're going to do your other 3 summons. And you're just going to keep casting whatever's available and trying to avoid casting Ruin whenever you can. Once you figure that out, the job is brain dead simple. And every single rotation, you're only casting 3 spells. There's only 3 times you even see a cast bar on the job every 2 minutes. But at the same time, because of this, you have oddball things such as a mandatory charge. If you don't charge in the Ifrit phase and use your gap closer, you suffer. If you do use it at the wrong time, well, you might die and might wipe the party. It's bad design, and quite frankly, Summoner I really do hope gets a rework because of this. The job is too easy, and it's very, very, very inflexible. It's not a fun job to play, but it is the easiest. Then you have Black Mage, a very difficult job to play. Quite possibly the hardest job in the entire game to play, where you have to do nothing but cast and try to do everything in your power to move as little as possible, utilizing your between the lines and ethereal manipulation to move in very short bursts and just keep on casting and keep doing your thing and never let a Nokian drop. It's very difficult to do, and it's very recommended that you don't prog as Black Mage without knowing what the fight is. It's insane. And then you have Red Mage, which is kind of between the two. Every other cast is instant, so you have plenty of mobility, but if you're trying really hard, you still feel a bit inflexible, so you have a little bit of that balancing act. You have a gap closer, you have an exit strategy, you have a melee attack, and you have a lot of flexibility. It's a job that I main, and I love Red Mage, despite the fact that a lot of times when it comes to getting buffs for potency and whatnot, we kind of get left behind because, well, we have a lot of flexibility and we have a lot of utility. We have an instacast res. We're quite frankly the best job when it comes to resing, even though it's a DPS loss. We have 2 raid-wide mitigations, unlike the other 2 casters which only have 1. So with all that said, where would this fourth caster sit in? And before you ask, what about Blue Mage? What about Blue Mage? Seriously, what about Blue Mage? If you're hoping that the new job is going to be, oh, what if the new job is Blue Mage, but real? Blue Mage, but it's not limited. They already announced there's going to be a second limited job class. Blue Mage, with that, Blue Mage is limited forever. That's just what it is now. Deal with it. So what would this third job or this fourth caster be? Well, it's hard to say. Okay. So far, the only hint we have is that Teenage Mutant Turtle shirt, which who knows what it could be. It could mean that it's a green mage because the turtles are green. It would be the most obvious, almost too obvious, one might add. But at the same time, we do have the Shamrock charm that Kryle got at the end of the current MSQ. And well, Kryle, we already know from an interview, is going to be playing a bigger role in upcoming MSQs. We already know that. It was teased to us, which would tend to lead us to believe that, in fact, whatever the next job is, because we haven't seen Kryle in the trailer, Kryle's going to be that job. Which then would leave that Shamrock, which is the Green Mage's signature. It's reasonable to assume that the job could be Green Mage. But what does a Green Mage do? Well, the thing is that a Green Mage in other Final Fantasies would go ahead and provide a lot of the sort of utility that we already have on jobs. A Green Mage was necessary in Final Fantasy XII to cast Decoy, which is basically turning someone into a tank. They have spells like Bubble, which would double their HP, or their max HP, I should say. It would have plenty of other skills that we see on Blue Mage now, such as Toad's Oil and other gimmicky spells like that. They are a buff and debuff job. And quite frankly, the utility they bring is way too overpowered for the game balance right now. So whatever Green Mage would be, we can't compare it to other games. And before you go, they'd never do that. They never do that. Why would they go ahead and go against Final Fantasy history? They already did with Sage, dingus. Sage used to be the Omnicaster. They used to be the master of white and black magic, knowing all spells ever since they were introduced in Final Fantasy III. And now it's a healer with lasers. Once you had that, any sort of mentality for Final Fantasy history is gone. It is. It's just gone. Don't expect it there. It's gone forever. It's not coming back either. Okay? I would suspect, if it is Green Mage, it is going to be something nature focused. Because most likely, it would be a job that is focused in the new world. While we do here in Eorzea already have a caster that draws off the land in Conjurer and White Mage, mechanically in the game, they barely have anything anymore that draws off the land. The only thing they draw off of now is the freaking divine power of blinding something to death. Between Glare, Holy, and Dia, which was turned undead back in Final Fantasy I, they're a light wielder now, despite the fact lore-wise they draw from nature. But this does kind of open the door for Green Mage to be kind of nature-based. But then one might argue, why not Geomancer? Geomancer's a weird one. So we have no hints towards a Geomancer, and historically all Geomancer did was just cast random spells based on the location. We might get Geomancer actually as our limited job. That'd be kind of funny. God, that actually would be kind of funny. Ooh. There's a theory. Oh man, what if our new caster is Geomancer and it is our limited job? Ooh. The only job we get is Viper. No, they wouldn't do that to us, right? Right? But anyway, it's hard to draw what Geomancer would do. So, what are our other options that do make sense? One that goes around is Time Mage. The generation of Teenage Mutant Turtles that was shown did, in fact, have time travel. So that hint would match up. And in fact, Kryl, being a character originally from Final Fantasy V, well, there would be a history for her being a Time Mage, seeing as how Kryl was able to play every job there, and Time Mage was in fact one of them. The Horus Berserker was still the most cute. You can't question me on that. Cute Zerker for the win. Anyway. So it could be Time Mage. But then the question becomes, what would a Time Mage do? And this raises a lot more questions. A Time Mage in Final Fantasy V, and in a lot of the other Final Fantasies for that fact, would be the bearer of the haste spell, the slow spell, as well as the quick spell, a spell that would immediately let the caster take a couple turns in quick succession with time being frozen, as well as Comet and Meteor. The thing is that Comet and Meteor are already Black Mage LBs. The only way you'd be able to take this away from Black Mage is if you did a revamp of the entire LB system, which I'd honestly be in favor of, to be perfectly honest. As much as I love my Red Mage, I am so sick of A, never being able to cast Limit Break without people being angry at me, and then B, blinding everyone with it. I'm kidding. I love blinding everyone with it. I love messing you all up. But that's also why I'm not allowed to use Limit Breaks, but I digress. Because all of those kind of spells are already in the Black Mage LB, it's hard to see them as a spell that the Time Mage could use. And then on top of that, there were abilities in the past in Final Fantasy XIV that would give players haste and give enemies slow. But so far, the only one that exists is Arm's Length. That gives enemies slow. And pretty much it's used by tanks pretty much exclusively for this fact, to give enemies slow and be used as MIT in large pack pulls in dungeons, which, by the way, tanks, you should be doing. I would actually especially recommend using Arm's Length in your second pack pull before the boss. You're not going to use Arm's Length in the middle of that boss, right? No, you're not. Come on, be honest, you're not. Well, why not? Good place to use that MIT. And you are using MIT between those pack pulls, right? You don't hate your healers, right? Right? But anyway. What about haste, though? Astro used to give haste. There used to actually be other spells that gave haste as well. But all of them have been removed. There are some classes that have been fine-tuned that give themselves a self-haste. Samurai gives themselves a self-haste. Ninja gives themselves a self-haste. To my knowledge, I believe that's about it. But they just have to maintain that at all times for maximum DPS. And then their potency is adjusted accordingly. If you were to give haste to a job that gives it to other players, there now comes the issue of balancing it. And this is one of the reasons you saw it vanish on Astro. Astro used to have haste. It vanished because it was impossible to balance Astro and make it so that you'd want any other healer other than Astro. It made Astrologian mandatory. And in a game where they want to make sure that all jobs are viable in content, they don't want to do that. It's one of the reasons why you can't res in Criterion Dungeon, because otherwise my red mage would be mandatory in Criterion Dungeon. Easy. Because I can res the fastest and I can res repeatedly. If I'm left alive with a party of 3, res, done. We're back up after a failed mechanic. You can't have that. You see? So, if it is Time Mage, it's going to be in a way that is going to make it not what you think it's going to be. But who knows? There's also one last theory. A job that has been kind of called Pictomancer. A Pictomancer is basically what Realm was in Final Fantasy VI. A caster that draws pictures of enemies and then mimics their spells. It could be interesting. You could take that to all kinds of different ways. You could take that any way you'd want. It'd be very interesting, very fascinating. And the main draw of this is the fact that all of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were named after famous painters. So this one kind of fits, right? Here's what I have to look at it as. Okay. The only surefire clue we have is in fact the shirt. And considering historically how Yoshi P has kind of made his hints very abstract, it could literally be anything. You can draw any conclusion you want out of that. And we'd have no idea. It'd be limitless as to what it could be. My prediction, though, that I'm going to lock in here is, as the thumbnail suggests, it's going to be Green Mage. That's what I think it's going to be. Could I be wrong? Probably. Like I said, I gave you good reasons why it could be any of them. And also for that same reason, anyone that says, oh, I called it, you had an equal chance of being wrong. I would dare say, anyone who wants to go ahead and try to gloat that they had this nailed down, you're kind of being a douche. I'm sorry, you kind of are. And even if I'm correct that it is Green Mage, which is kind of the majority consensus, I feel, I'm not going to brag about it. Like I just said, I gave you a good reason why it could be literally anything. I also gave you good reasons why it couldn't be what I just said. But we'll find out tomorrow. And I'll cover it on stream at twitch.tv/EagleFalcon. And I'll probably upload it here as well. But for now, it's 2:30 a.m. on Friday. I need to get this up. Take care, rest well, and hope to see you around. Bye-bye.